Hey, it's Scott with Renegade Hybrids. We have a 928 we want to show you. We've done a ton of these through the years. We've done most of them now with LSs recently, and now we have an LSA. And so if you're not familiar with this engine, it's a supercharged 6.2 liter LS3 based engine. And this thing happens to be the E-Rod version, which puts out just shy of 600 horsepower. And this is one heck of an incredibly fun car to drive. Let me show it to you. Now keep in mind that because this is the LSA, because of the fact that this is a real nice high-end build, there's some stuff here that we've made minor modifications that would be above and beyond our normal conversion kit. All of our normal conversion kit would be able to apply to a 500 horsepower small block Chevy or a 500 horsepower LS, all that sort of stuff. But because of the fact that there's an intercooler with the LSA, there's extra reservoirs, which I'll show you. We did do more of a cold air intake in order to create even more power. This is the sort of stuff that I also wanted to share with you. The biggest thing also is we actually have quite a few customers that have 928s that are interested in potentially doing right-hand drive versions. And so this video will also illustrate that the steering shaft will clear on the other side without a problem at all. And it really doesn't matter whether it's left or right-hand drive, that our conversion kit should be perfectly fine. So this project is approximately 85% done. It's actually going to go to the body shop, it's going to go get some interior, then it comes back to us for the last detail phases. We wanted to get it running and driving, and so I wanted to share it with you. There's going to be dust, there's going to be pieces that will need to be powder coated, there's going to be some modifications that will change at the very, very end. But the bottom line is this is a perfect opportunity for you to see what we've done to bring it up to this point. And so here we go, come on in. So again, it's the LSA, so it's the supercharged version. This is not something you would typically see on a small block Chevy or an LS conversion unless there's going to be a supercharger. This is the chiller intake or chiller reservoir for the intercooler, which is down below. If you pan down here, you'll notice that the radiator, it is our 928 custom radiator that we build. But if you notice, it's not sitting in the original stock mounts. What we did is we did make a modification so that we tipped it down. The reason being, which I'll show you from the underneath side here in just a little bit, is we also have made room for the intercooler. This is not something that you need to do with your LS conversion or your small block Chevy conversion unless you're going to be doing a supercharger, and then I would highly recommend that you would consider doing something like this. The accessory package that's on the front is from the LSA. Most accessory packages that are compact to the smaller cars, such as the Corvettes and the Camaros, are going to fit in a 928 because there's so much room. In this particular case, what we did is we did this cold air intake, and if you notice right underneath here, there's positive pressure that comes in through the front, and it floods the radiator, floods the intercooler, the AC condenser, and it also pushes up right here, so it gives us a nice lot of cool air forward of the radiator. So we did this cold air intake that's right here. This stuff will be powder coated. The blue tape will not be here. This will all be really, really nicely gusseted, all that sort of stuff. At this point, because it's going to the body shop, I'd rather just leave it like this because there's probably going to be a little bit of, I don't know, sanding dust and things like that that's going to end up on it, and I wouldn't want that to contaminate any of the powder coating. But as you can see, the engine bay is actually really, really nice and tidy, and there is a ton of room. You don't have to zoom in here, but there is a ton of room, unlike the 928. I wouldn't be able to do that with the 928. Same thing on that side. As you can zoom in on that side, there's absolutely a massive amounts of room. So now, the way that we access the wiring for this car is there's two different plugs. Now, keep in mind that in the 928s, they oftentimes change the wiring through the years. And for me to go through all the color coding and things like that, I'm going to tell you right now, it's impossible. But there's a 14-pin connector that you're going to find in a couple different locations. It's either going to be up in this vicinity right over in here, or over in here, depending upon the year, or sometimes up towards the firewall. It's 2 rows of 7, and that 14-pin connector normally carries the majority of your information to your gauges. It also is your switched hot, your constant hot, your neutral, and various different things like that. Then there's a 4-pin connector on some of the cars, which can be in various different locations as well, and that 4-pin connector is the leftover parts, or the leftover connectors that you need to be able to tie into the electrical system. Again, I can't get into the schematics, I can't get into other color codes and things of that nature, but it's not difficult for you to be able to tone those wires out and determine where they go. I highly recommend that you don't go into the gauges and try to modify the gauges. If your gauges work, that very, very fragile foil trace that's behind your gauges, if you try to modify any of that, it just completely falls apart. It's bad. Whereas if you just don't touch it, they continue to work, and oftentimes they work for the life of the car. And so it's a good thing to kind of leave alone. Remember, we have sending units that are available, and those sending units can be screwed into the GM engines, whatever ones you're using, and they will talk directly to those gauges that are on the inside of the car. All we need to know is the value of the gauges. So water temperature, oil pressure, you get the idea. And then on top of that, as far as tachometer goes, we have a way of being able to tie into the LS engines and be able to then feed information through an adapter that allows us to be able to emulate the pulses so that your tachometer can work as well. Some of this does change from year to year to year. We can help you with that. That's not a problem at all. But bring it on in here. You can see the screen that we did. This is a custom screen. This is a powder-coated piece. It's all been all extruded up into these edges and stuff, and so we're pretty happy about that. Please excuse a few of the bugs. That'll all be taken care of by the body shop. But then if you look in past this particular screen, and which again is going to be difficult to focus on, you can actually see the intercooler for the supercharger. You can see the AC condenser on top of the radiator, which is all the way in the back. The way that we did this is we captured all of the air that's coming into this intake right here and kept it only going through those three elements in order to increase the efficiency. And the way that we did it is we put this floor underneath here, which I'll show you here in a minute. This floor really is a nice custom piece to be able to hold it all in there. And it's key for any of our conversions to make sure that the air that comes into the intake is actually only allowed to go through the cooling elements, whether it be oil coolers, intercoolers, radiators, condensers. If it finds its way around another way, then that's going to be unfortunate. The only sneak on this particular one is once the positive pressure builds up here, the air cleaner, which is up towards the top forward of these elements right there, does see a little bit of air up there. So that would be the only way that it sneaks around. And of course, that makes a cold air intake, so it works out great. Let me show you the underneath side. Now the slant is here because of the fact that the bottom of the radiator is sitting at an angle. And so this brings it right up, and then the air is sealed around the radiator so it only goes through the radiator element. But this whole entire tray that goes across here, as you can see, it gives strength to the stock lower valance piece that's here, as well as it keeps all of that air flowing through those elements that we want them to, and it even creates more air out towards the brakes so that the air doesn't go down this direction. And so this is one of those things, we don't sell these because everybody's front end is different and all that sort of stuff, but it is one thing that if you were to do kind of the extra mile, so to speak, on your conversion, doing a floor like this just from the front edge of the valance back past the radiator really enhances your cooling. This car also actually came to us with some performance upgrades, such as the sway bar. This is our oil pan as we slowly but surely go back. This oil pan obviously comes all the way up here to the front, but here's the big thing about this pan. Whenever we do custom pans for our conversions, this would be 944s and 928s, and we do on occasion do custom pans for 914s and 911s as well. We always put in trap doors in a diamond pattern down here, as well as windage trays. Most pan builders do not do that, and please make sure that if you're gonna have a custom pan done for whatever reason, that you have the ability to be able to keep the oil right in by the oil pickup, and then you have a windage tray so that you don't have a bunch of aeration from the crank spinning. More information, just call us about that. But honestly, our pans, they're a road race quality pan, and they work absolutely fantastic for this application. If you come over to this side over here, you'll actually see the other reason why I like our pans. Right up here are the oil fittings for you to be able to do a remote cooler, which we have an oil cooler on this, and a remote filter setup. The LS filters, as far as I'm concerned, were kind of an abomination. They're little teeny weeny tiny things, and yeah, they're okay. They work, you know, pretty good for a stock car, but obviously we want to do things considerably better. By having a remote filter location, which is actually right up in here, kind of a clever location for it on a 928, we can use a much bigger, much better filter. Then, of course, we can also go through our oil cooler as well, which is really difficult to see in this particular application because it's hidden back up in here. But having the ability to be able to plummet in and out from our oil pan, which is right up in here, is a very, very nice feature. You don't have to use some sort of a pancake adapter or something like that in order to have it go in and out. The end fittings are already on there. Voila, you've got yourself a cooler loop with the oil filter all located on that same loop. This particular engine, like I said before, is the E-Rod. We're going to go ahead and start to slowly pan back. You're going to see lots and lots of these kitty cats here. Catalytic converters like crazy. It's part of the E-Rod process. These cats do get nice and toasty, so we did protect it. We've done some stainless steel heat shields that are right up in here. We've already put quite a bit of miles on this car to make sure that everything is going to run very efficiently. So here we go, 4 catalytic converters, which is mandatory for the E-Rod to be able to pass its emissions. And one of the nice things about the E-Rod is the tune that's in it is something that, as long as you're using these cats, as long as you're using a similar intake to what they recommend, you don't ever have to touch the tune. As a matter of fact, it's a lock tune and they run fantastic. I mean, I'm sure they spent hundreds of thousands of dollars to make sure that the tune was just perfect. So I'm going to take you back this direction. So some more underneath on the 928. This is where it gets completely different. I happen to be a lover of the 928 transaxles. The 5-speed early transaxle was not the better BorgWarner design. I get it, not great. They do wear out relatively quickly. The later 5-speed BorgWarner designed 928 transaxle, I think it's 85 and later, 86 and later, something like that. That's a really, really nice transmission. And then as far as the automatics go, the 3-speed automatic, 4-speed automatic, they're made by Mercedes-Benz, and they're actually built really, really strong. And so that's something that I would encourage you to keep. This particular customer, because we're running the big horsepower, and because he wanted to try something a little bit different, decided to go along the lines of the T56. And so we have the T56 Corvette transaxle with a modified torque tube and a kit that we purchased in order to be able to handle this end of things right here. It's not something you need to do, but it is something that if you chose to do it, if you wanted to go this direction, it works out okay. Several major modifications needed to occur and a few little stumbling blocks that we ran into as well. I'm not discouraged by it. Actually drives really, really nice now, but we did need to get through quite a few hurdles in order to be able to get to the end result. And we're quite pleased with the end result. That's a big check to write also, but on the flip side, if the T56 is your friend and you want to go that direction as it was for Ken, hey, this did turn out to be absolutely awesome. I did do a Y pipe and it came into a 3-inch drain pipe and I came all the way back, and this is interesting. So what I did is through the 4 catalytic converters, I knew that I'd be taking a lot of the lower frequencies out with those cats. I used a pretty moderate resonator that's in here. I did this because I didn't want the vibration of the drone to head up inside the cabin, especially because the guy likes sound systems, and you should see the sound system in this car. It's pretty amazing. So I wanted to minimize the amount of exterior noise that was vibrating or cascading up into the chassis. And so I did a resonator through here. And then I did what a lot of people would think might be a real stupid thing. And I went with a Flowmaster, which, believe it or not, most people say everything sounds like a Flowmaster when you put it through a Flowmaster. Well, I did it on purpose because I knew that the sound would be changed enough, and they have a particular muffler that I think would work great for this application, and I can't wait to show it to you. Come on up here. So obviously in the 928 had the dual exhaust, and so they've got a single end dual out with it separated somewhat similarly to what they did in the 928. And because of the fact that these do not create any back pressure, if anything, supposedly they actually create a little bit more scavenging as far as the air goes, I said, okay, we're gonna do this. And actually the sound is incredibly lovely. We'll have other videos or another video of this eventually running up and down the street so that you can hear it. But I was pretty pleased with this. So it doesn't have that tin can, Folgers crystal can kind of Flowmaster sound at all, because it goes through the 4 cats and through that resonator. And by the time the pulses get down here, it doesn't create that Flowmaster style sound. We get this question often. Will it work with the right-hand drive? And I indicated just a couple seconds ago that I would show you that it will. So if you look right up in here, that gives you an idea that there's lots and lots of room. And if you come over to this side over here and you see the steering shaft, you can see that it would work. It's a little tough once again to, film, camera, get spatial awareness, all that sort of stuff. But the only thing that may become an issue is if you decide to use headers, or if the particular manifolds that you selected were not such that they will clear the steering shaft just perfectly. Keep in mind that for the LS engines especially, there's, I don't know, 6, 8, 10, 12 different sets of manifolds that bolt right on without a problem, with different applications, obviously. So there you go. That kind of answers the steering shaft question. So that's it. That basically takes you stem to stern. I did miss one thing, and I just want to indicate that right here. That would be the fuel pump setup. Keep in mind the 928 does actually have a decent fuel pump, and as long as you're not trying to support something that's going to be over 450, 500 horsepower, you really don't need to do much with the fuel system. We actually did upgrade because we're running over 500, close to 600 horsepower, and so we did go with a different pump, but we kept it in a similar location. We plumbed into the existing lines, and it works out great. And so there's so little that needs to be done with the 928 in order to make this work for the conversion, because much of the infrastructure is already there supporting the V8 that came from Porsche. So it's one of our simplest conversions, if not our simplest conversion. We're very, very proud to be able to represent this. And so if you have any additional questions, give us a buzz. 702-739-8011. You can also check us out on our website, www.renegadehybrids.com. My name is Scott. From Travis, myself, and from all the gentlemen that work here and the lady in the front office, we'd like to say thank you very much. Appreciate it.